Hi, it's Riikka Kovasin here. Let me first do the checkups again. See that if I can see myself now in video form. And then of course, so I can see the comments this way from the computer. Let's see. There, that way. Yep. Looking good. I think, at least I can see the video now. Working. And then let me add the link to the blog post or the kind of announcement post where all the links and the materials are named. So I just added to the chat. And then I probably should add a link to this video also to the event. Let me do that real quickly again. Because there's luckily still time before we start. So, copy link. And then we are adding it here. Like so. So now I think all the housekeeping is done. And I can concentrate and actually show my hands at least. Here. I've been a little bit, well, I have had a cold, so if my voice starts to prevail me, I'm then taking a sip of honey water, but hopefully we'll be okay. I was at work today also, so should be okay. So this is something I'm recreating during this live, a little Halloween inspired card using different Finnabair embellishments and well, not a lot, but quite a few of the Art Basics line. So there's two types of gesso, and then there's modeling paste, and then heavy body gel. So if you're watching and seeing me, if you can let me know if you can hear me okay, and well, if I need to, for example, speak a little bit louder or something. Hi Jutta! So Halloween kind of theme today. Of course, you could do a journal page or a bigger project with the same elements. I just decided to do a little card with these things. Thanks for letting me know, Jutta, that sound is good. Great, good to hear. Let me move those a little bit side so the view ain't that cluttered. I do need different kinds of things during the show, but still. So, a couple of more minutes and then we start. Of course, I'm hoping at least that Facebook is on my side. The recording will be then here in the group and as well in my own YouTube channel later on. Like always during the show, if you have any questions, please just then let me know. And if I somehow miss your comments during this live, I'll answer them afterwards. I just kept a workshop through Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and during that time I missed a whole lot of comments. They weren't just visible in my screen, but after then watching the recording and the comments there, I was able to see them and of course then answer. But don't get alarmed if I don't answer right away. It might be just I didn't see it, or then it might be that I didn't see it because it wasn't on the screen. Somehow Facebook works in mysterious ways. We don't celebrate Halloween as such here in Finland. It's more like All Hallows Eve. Is that not All Saints or something? A little bit different than Halloween, but it's kind of starting to get rooted also in here. And of course there's people who love Halloween. I'm kind of fascinated by this kind of, how do you say, visual thing. One more minute and then we'll start. You can still grab a cup of coffee or tea depending the time. It's almost 8 p.m. here in Finland, but if you're in the Americas, for example, then it's just early morning, so maybe you want to get a cup of coffee to get you going. A quick zip of the honey water, and then we can start. Okie dokie, so once again, this is something I'm now recreating. A little Halloween card with some self-made dimensional paste and different embellishments from the Finnabair line. The first thing I did was to prepare the card base. So this is from an A4 sized black cardstock sheet that I just cut a square. So A4 size is 21 centimeters this way, so I cut also 21 centimeters this way and then fold it in half. So I get this kind of elongated, narrow card base. Heippa hei Tati! And then something on top. This is a patterned paper from A.B.Studio. I cut a little bit smaller than the 10.5 centimeter card, and then another black layer on top. The first thing I'm now doing, and these are secured by machine sewing. I'm adding double-sided tape to this piece. So hopefully I'm able to combine the center with the card base during this live, now that I have it here, because of course the mediums might still be wet when we are done. So that's kind of a little trick to not, because if these are still kind of loose and everything is still wet, I can't flip it around or everything will fall. So by adding the tapes beforehand might resolve that problem later on. At this stage, a couple of words in Finnish and then I'll switch back to English. Heippa hei Asta! Niin kuin yleensäkin, niin siis kysymyksiä saa esittää myös suomeksi ja vastailen niitä sitten tässä liven aikana, mikäli vaan huomaan. Facebookissa oli viime viikolla jotain jännää glitchiä, että siis ne ei vaan näkynyt tuossa ruudulla ne kaikki kommentit, mutta mä palaan sitten jokaiseen kommenttiin. Liven jälkeen käyn ne kaikki läpi. So I just said the same thing in Finnish that I said earlier in English, that if I don't see your comment or answer, I'll go through everything after the live. This is kind of playing with blacks and white, this card. So I have black cardstock and now I'm adding white liquid acrylic on top. and then just using a wet brush to make kind of a misty blob, let's say. I'm also partly using just a wet brush and just really gently touching to the pool, kind of pulling away from it. Not totally painting the whole thing. Let's see if that's enough. And then some splashes. I thought this would be kind of a ghostly figure in the background. If you don't have the white, this is called titanium white liquid acrylic. Of course you can use white gesso as well, especially as it's an absorbing surface, so you're able to dilute it. But this is not totally white, it's more like whitish or grayish area here. Luckily that was, I think, almost the only time. There's one more time I can think of that I'm using the heat tool, but not much during this live. Just dry the puddles so we can get going with the dimensional paste. As you might know, there is dimensional paste ready in Finnabair line called modeling paste, for example, but it's tinted white. So if you're trying to do black dimensional thing, that won't do, because you end up with a gray thing. You can't turn that totally black. So instead, you can make your own using black gesso and some kind of thickening agent. Even though that's the Finnabair gesso is actually heavy body, so it's quite thick. For this kind of really crisp dimensional thing, you might even want to have it thicker. What this does also is to make it glossy, because I'm mixing with heavy body gel, which is a gloss kind of gel. So in the end I'm getting this a little bit glossy look with a totally black paste. Oops, no, not gel here. Here we go. And then we just mix it. Now when I'm mixing it, it might look a little bit grayish, but that's just a heavy body gel looking whitish now. It will dry clear, so this will be totally black afterwards. You can use the same thing with any acrylic paint as well to make them thicker, so you can then make these dimensional layers. Because like I said, the modeling paste is tinted, there's white pigment, so if you add red to it you get pink, if you add blue to it you get pale blue. So that's why we use the clear gel. Heipä hei Teija! Now I have my thick paste done, and I'm adding it to my card through a stencil. This one, I think this might be Gothic book or something like that, the name of the stencil. And what I really like about it is the type it has, but also these numbers here. I usually try to position the stencil so that I get the numbers. In the sample they are not showing because I used the stencil a little bit more up, so actually the numbers are underneath the whole thing. But this time let me try to get them showing in the finished result as well. And there we go. Now this one has gesso and gel medium, so you really need to clean your stencil afterwards. I have a bucket of water underneath here, my table, so I'll just submerge it there and clean the palette knife to a rag. But if I wouldn't be online doing this right now, then I would go and wash the stencil immediately. Moikka moi, Mia! Now I'm moving this a bit aside so we don't have to use the heat tool to dry it. Because I like the different, I'm not sure if I can make the camera pick it up. Because this one is really, let me see where I'm at. Nowhere near. Hopefully now better. This is kind of crisp image, this one. Okay. I have to get up, otherwise I'm not... Okay, here we go. So these are crisp, so they are air dried. I haven't used the heat tool, whereas in this blank, it's more like bubbly. So I actually boiled the medium with the heat tool, and thus creating the different look. So let's do the wood part now that the background is drying. The base material for it, it's just thick cardboard. As you can see, this is a cover of an art journal or a notebook. And what I do is just to cut a 3 centimeter, that's almost 1.25 inches piece of this. It's too thick for my paper cutter to go through, but I'll get a nice kind of line, which I then can cut with my scissors. If you have a craft knife and a kind of craft sheet, or you can use the craft knife, then that might be an easier solution at this stage. Here we go. Then on top I add the modeling paste. Because I'm adding colorants on top, it doesn't matter if it's white at this stage. And what I use to make the pattern is this older Prima marketing, I think it was called wood grain stencil, but there's different ones with different brands. I think any kind of linear wavy line would do. Kind of trick the eye to believe that that's a textured wood piece. Or if you don't have a stencil that would fit the pattern you're looking for, then maybe even try using a palette knife and make these little streaks of the medium with that. Same thing with this stencil, it goes to the bucket so I can clean it afterwards. I'm just wiping the excess to the rag this time. Now, like I said, for this part I actually boiled it using the heat tool. so you don't have to wait and sit. I have prepared another one already boiled, so there's the kind of bubbling look, and that's just, no, it's not focusing. Oh no, it's focusing. Yeah, so there's these kind of almost like candle wax things here. Look at my baby. And that's just by using a heat tool and to boil the surface. Then, as I'm going for a darker look, black gesso is always a good option. Even though the waxes which I'm using to color this one would go on top of this surface as well, but they would react maybe a little bit differently according to the acrylic treated and the non-treated areas of the just thick cardboard. So a quick coat of black gesso will make things easier, and kind of everything will react the same way. Like so. Especially now through the camera, I'm thinking that this is now looking just a blank black piece, no texture visible. Then I'll move this aside and move to this already dried piece, almost like a cooking show. So I'm using 3 waxes to color. Of course, you could do with less, or use acrylic paint instead. These are called stained wood and soot, that are kind of acting as the base layer, let's say. And I'm using a sturdy brush to apply them. And at this stage I'm also going through the edges, so there's not the cardboard showing anymore. Like so. And then to make that texture a bit more visible again, I'm using old white wax. This could be white gesso also, with a dry brushing technique, so you're only kind of touching the tops of the piece and not going through the whole thing. Just kind of trying to highlight that texture that the boiled medium has. A little bit mixing it. I'm not sure if camera is picking that up. But just with a couple of colors you get that kind of worn wooden look, like it would be an old wooden plank. And then we have one embellishment element done. Let's make a couple more with stamps. So I'm needing a bit of, let me move these aside. So a bit of vellum, yeah, that might be, and then some white cardstock for the moon. For the vellum, I'm using a book stamp, again with this kind of, is it called black letter, kind of Gothic font. So it looks like there's a page of an old book or a newspaper. I'm also thinking about or obituary, if that's the right word, as this is Halloween. And this is Archival ink on top of vellum, which is a non-absorbing surface. So, as I don't want to smudge the text, I'm now using the heat tool to set the ink. And that was the other time I used heat tool during this live. Let's see if I actually calculated those correctly, that there's no more heat tool using during this one. And then this moon is from a stamp set. I think it was an Art Daily stamp set even, with the moons and the suns. And I thought that this kind of full moon would go nicely with the Halloween theme. The same ink, but this time this is just regular cardstock, so no need to heat set it. And then I just cut it loose. And then let's see if our dimensional black paste has already dried, or dried at least enough, so I can then a bit later on mount the whole cluster on top. Like so. And then let's see, still quite glossy, so I'm thinking that this is still too wet. Let's try there. Yeah. Definitely still wet. You could use a heat tool, but like I said, it might if you're careful, it might just be okay, but if you are not careful, there's a risk that you end up boiling that medium and then it's not as crisp as it was before. And I'm kind of liking the kind of difference between the boiled and unboiled textures. So the other one is crisp and the other one's not. So I'm not going to use the heat tool this time. To add a little bit of dimension to the moon, I'm inking around the edge, and to make these little bones a bit more like worn, ancient looking, I'm using the same ink to add a couple of touches to these as well. These are made before the live using just hot glue and Finnabair molds, and then I painted these using white gesso. So there's this lovely chalky look to them. And then just some ink. It could be also the waxes. I'm just thinking that that's an easy solution. And then we need to tie these together and add that little token to them as well. So a length of twine. And let's put these on opposite directions somehow. Maybe like that. I'm not liking that they cover too much of one another. Maybe like that. Let's not overthink it. And then the little token the other way around, or otherwise I'm getting it the wrong way up. Yeah, this way. And then let's tie it. Come on. It's now playing hard to get. Okay, now it's working. Just a couple of knots. Then a little bit shorter, that one. Here we go. And then we need the twine also to make a little halo kind of ring. Kind of drawing the eye in. I'm just using the Gesso jar as kind of a guide. Oh, come on. To make a ring, but I don't want each one to be the same length. So now we need a little wiggle. And then let's tie these together tightly to form a little kind of wreath or a ring to guide the eye in. And then another knot. Here we go. Now there's the plank, the moon, the ring. Let's first add this one, the ring underneath, and then the plank comes on top. And the easiest solution for these two to be adhered or secured together is a stapler. A couple of staples will hold them and also add a little extra touch to the little cluster. Also, that kind of prevents the problem with vellum, because you probably know that if you add a really liquid adhesive to vellum, it starts buckling, and that's not a cool look. To make some cobweb, let's say, for the cluster, I'm using just white sewing thread, adding it and then making a whole lot of mess, kind of trying to get it into a cobweb-y stage. And what I added underneath the little moon is just foam tape, so I'll get a little bit layered look. And then our bones coming on top. As we have the heavy body gel here, I'm using that. You could use also just regular craft adhesive, craft glue for this, but as I have it here, so that at least is really sturdy glue, so it will stay put. Here we go. Rest back to the jar. Let's be frugal, because we weren't that frugal with the other two pastes. I just cleaned from my palette knife. And then we need some foam tape to mount the whole thing to the card base. Hopefully it will be okay, because of course the bones are not dried in place just yet. But I can keep them here, and then this one. And then the mount. Now the texture paste here, the self-made black one, isn't dried yet, but on the other hand it will also adhere the cluster better on its place. And then just a couple of word stickers, and then we mount it to the card base. So it's really an easy card, nothing too fancy, just adding different little details from Finnabair embellishments and elements that go to the Halloween theme. You may see from this one, again I need to check where the camera actually is, that I didn't have any of, so I changed or to an of. Not the prettiest thing, but well, it's a Halloween card, so probably it will be okay. Now let's see if I can mount this even though everything is still a bit wet, as I have the tapes already here, which was the first thing I did. So I'm kind of securing the cluster with my other hand and fingers and getting the tapes removed, and then just eyeballing it to the center and pressing down. After the paste is dried, then it's easier to go over the whole thing and really make sure that it's then tightly secured in its place. So there we have it. 30 minutes and the card is done. Like I said, it's really easy. Partly this was a shorter one because I had pre-made some of the things, or have stages, let's say, to them, and also the embellishments were ready cast. Do you have any questions? Kiitos, Kati. It can be from this project or any other project or medium. Quite a lot different mediums in this one, but on the other hand, if you have heavy gel and you have black and white gesso, then you're able to do this one and this one. Of course, this could be the same black texture paste here underneath, but if you want it to be white, like the modeling paste, you can then just mix heavy body gel with white gesso for that. Of course, it's easy because the modeling paste is already done. It's a paste which you can use ready from the jar, but you can make your own as well. Only the thing that if you want to make black or let's say bright red paste, then mixing a colorant with modeling paste doesn't result a vibrant red or a really pitch black, because it has the white pigment in it. Thank you, Annika. Well, I hope you liked this live. Let me then say thank you all for coming, and I'll clean up a little bit for example, clean the stencils and then start answering if there's any questions that I missed. And if you're watching the recording, if you have any questions, just add them here. I'm trying to keep an eye at least a couple of days to see the comments. So have a great Saturday, evening or day, depending where you are. And I'll be seeing you again next month. Kiitos Kati. Kiitos kun tulitte. Bye!